Hello, this is Neo, just an average CSGO player, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
If you ask me, what is the G.O.A.T, the greatest of all time flavour of gamer subs? Well, you know what? In keeping with the theme of this video, I don't think there is one. Certainly I have a favourite, but you know what? Even that changes. Depends on my mood, depends kind of like where my headspace is at, depends on what I want to do in the day. If I want to have like a really nice taste, if I want something that I just don't think about and it's very mild, if I want something like full on and makes me like ready to get going, something a bit more harsh. So two of my favourites that would be G.O.A.Ts would be Sakura Splash, that's a sour cherry. There would be Cherry Lime Skull, that's a sweet cherry. I would put in there Lemonade, classic flavour. And then one I used to have as my favourite, but I go back to every now and then, it's sort of my mistress, is the Guacamole Gamer Fart 9000, which is just a silly name for a strawberry and lime combo that really hits the spot. There's plenty of other good flavours too, but those would be my four in the G.O.A.T category. Now, if you want some of the G.O.A.T energy formula, which is Gamer Subs, get 10% off everything on their website with the code Thorin. You know how to spell it. Thorin. Right. One thing I wanted to address, I've wanted to actually talk about this for a while, but I thought just do like a little rant on it. It's a good angle. Is I've noticed a trend among legendary sports figures. So particularly if you know the all-time great player in the NFL, Jerry Rice, perhaps the greatest wide receiver of all time. You know what? Looks both ways. I'm not one of those people who thinks it has to be the quarterback who's the GOAT. Maybe Jerry Rice is the GOAT. He actually seems like potentially the best player to ever play in the NFL. But you know what? Even beyond that, I could say, you think about the impact people on defense. I mean, Deion Sanders, unbelievable defender as a cornerback, and he could play offense too. Then you go to people like the quarterbacks. Well, regular season, the player you'd want is Peyton Manning, isn't it? Or Aaron Rodgers. But in the playoffs, maybe you'd want Tom Brady. Maybe you'd want Joe Montana. You keep going down positions. Aaron Donald's unbelievable from defense. Lawrence Taylor, wreck a whole game, win Super Bowls almost on his own, with the guy who's playing quarterback just has to game manage, etc. These people all deserve to be in the conversation for the GOAT. So Jerry Rice, what's cool is instead of just going, I'm the GOAT, fuck y'all. He does, I think he does his own drink called like GOAT Fuel or something. And so what he does is when he meets these people, like he meets Deion Sanders, he meets Tom Brady, he calls all of them GOAT. He just says, you're the GOATs, we're the GOATs. Now, I will say, the reason why I think the legends of the sports do that, and if you don't know, by the way, Michael Jordan privately certainly is very arrogant and thinks he's the best and no one will ever beat him. But publicly, he will always say things himself like, I wouldn't say I am the GOAT because I wouldn't want to disrespect Wilt Chamberlain or Jerry West. Interesting he says Jerry West. I notice no fan picks up on that. Jerry West is not someone, by the way, who ever actually was a dominant player in terms of championships. He won one. And with a cracked out super team. But he was unbelievable. And the joke is he's so good at basketball and in the playoffs and finals that even the people who beat him are like, yeah, you might be the GOAT. In fact, you're probably better than us, most of the players, if not all of them, on the Celtics that beat him all those times in the finals. So the interesting thing is, even Michael Jordan sort of tries to acknowledge, I didn't play against these people. Maybe they're the GOAT. It's all about eras and context. And maybe we're not only going off championships. Hence why Bill Russell isn't necessarily the GOAT, right? Hence why Robert Horry isn't greater than Michael Jordan. So anyway, the point is, Jerry Rice is the one who sort of introduced me to the idea that you could do this in an interesting way. Because I actually think it just makes way more sense. And by the way, we're now going to get some esports angles in here. This isn't going to be sports, but I'm going to use a sports framing initially to sort of warm you up to the idea, which is, I think it just makes way more sense to do this. And I think it also actually properly celebrates who's in the conversation. Because instead, people act like there is a consensus. Look, there is in the sense that if you polled people, so one name would win. Maybe it would be Tom Brady. Maybe it would be Michael Jordan. Maybe it would be LeBron, who even knows? Maybe it would be Wayne Gretzky. Maybe it would be Muhammad Ali. You know what I mean? Maybe it would be John Jones or GSP. You get my point. But there is only a consensus in terms of that's how many people agree. It doesn't actually make it reality. First of all, there can be no reality. You can't actually put all these people in a time machine in their prime, have them play against each other and know who is better. Also, what does better even mean? Is better recorded by stats? I don't think entirely. Is better recorded by championships? I certainly don't think so entirely, especially in fucking team sports. Better might mean something like could do everything in the game. It might mean peak level. If I take this player on this one day, no one ever played that game better, which actually might even mean a GOAT could be some really short-lived player who had a peak of only a few years and got criminally injured. But in that 1 year, no one else could have fucked with this guy. So I actually think literally any and every sport I've encountered, you can have this debate. So if it's hockey, then they've no, it must be Wayne Gretzky because he has more assists than anyone else has goals. Right, you've just defined being the GOAT as having the most points. I don't know why, because, for example, assists are great, but goals are what win you games. So by that logic, I could pick, like, my boy Mario Lemieux, who I think's a better goal scorer, but had tragic injuries, but I don't need him to have played his whole career. I could just pick a specific year. And I could say maybe, I don't know, 1996 or 1992, Mario Lemieux is the best player ever in hockey. That's a legitimate conversation. So if I say he's the GOAT, you don't have to go, but Wayne Gretzky, they can both be the GOATs. You know what? Fuck it. Defense is insanely important. Maybe Bobby Orr can get in this conversation. Hell, we can keep going, can't we? There's obviously those guys in the 60s and the 50s who were winning every fucking Stanley Cup. Then you have fucking Guy Lafleur, all these other all-time great players. Why can't they be GOATs? Why can't we have 5 or 6 like a real discussion? Then for basketball, it can be Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, maybe LeBron, Kobe. You can keep going. There's all sorts of insane. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain. You go to American football, there could be Peyton Manning. Yeah, I did the list before for American football. MMA, the good thing about that is as weight classes makes it even easier to have GOATs, right? And then you could say the heaviest one wins, but does he? I mean, people like BJ Penn and Randy Couture actually showed sometimes the lighter man can win. That's what's amazing about that sport. In boxing, now you're debating who they fought against, what era, what types of fights. Was it where the people fought 100 fights in a year? Is it where you only fight 3 times in a year? Is it where people avoided fights to make them bigger? Is it where people had all the fights in the prime? No, the point is you define the terms, and it's more about an interesting conversation about the players and how great they are and celebrating how great they are, not stupidly going PlayStation better than Nintendo. No, Nintendo better than PlayStation. Yeah, but what about the SNES? Yes, but I think that actually Xbox was very good, but PC forever, PC master it. Like, notice how childish that sounds. That is meant to be in the playground. Leave it in the playground. Same with tennis. Oh, so all of a sudden you have to have the most Grand Slams to be the GOAT. But all the people who told me Djokovic was the GOAT the whole fucking time, before he had the most Grand Slams, didn't care that Federer had more than him. Every Nadal fan said it was about head-to-head. Magically, it's not anymore when people beat him head-to-head. I notice how that fucking works. So I find it incredibly immature and childish. They think, people who say this person has to be the GOAT, it's not even close and you're an idiot if you think otherwise. They think they're saying an enlightened, intelligent thing. They're saying the most basic level 1 thinking about greatness, which is they're just going, right, I've decided this guy for reason X, maybe reason Y, and maybe I'll even add in a reason Z, and I'm not going to consider anything else, and everyone else has to follow my made-up rules, and you know what? Haha, I'm going to insult you and put myself above you because I think the most level 101 thinking. The reason why the legends don't think that way is they've had more time to watch the sport, to think about it, to consider how varied greatness is, and about how the difference between peak and top level and longevity and all-round versatility and excellence in a specialised area and ability to play with teammates or to do it solo. These are all fucking interesting components, aren't they? How about beyond just winning titles? What about when you're a floor raiser, when your team's really bad? No one even thinks about these concepts. So I think so much less of people, even some of my friends in esports, when they tell me it has to be this person for this reason, and if you show them right, you're glazing him. Grow up, mate. Grow the fuck up. There's such a wonderful world of discussion and greatness we can get into. I've done 3,000 plus videos on this channel. But if you just want to stick with that, you know what? Then fuck off. You're boring. You're not invited to the conversation. All these players are, but you aren't. You're actually discluded from our conversation. Now look, I will say the players who do that who are legends go a bit too far. Like they'll meet like Vince Carter and be like, I'm with a GOAT, Vince Carter. It's like, just say a legend. I'd say once you get out the first 5 or 6 true contenders, just say legend for the next 20, or people who were legendary for their franchise or did something amazing. Like Vince Carter's donking was legendary. If you want to say he's the GOAT donker, we can have that conversation. But the GOAT player, hence why when players come up and they go, Paul George is my GOAT. No, you mean favourite player, or you mean you think he's a legend, or you just care about his skill set rather than the fact that he didn't win. You don't have to constantly insult the fact that he choked a bunch of playoffs. Yeah, we know that. We know that. By the way, people who really are like top 3 or top 4 players of all time have choked massive fucking playoff series. You don't have to act like... This is where I know people are using sublimated religious desire, where they just go, he is the GOAT. Secretly, they mean God there. and then no one else can be the GOAT, because that would be heretical. They're monotheists. They don't have a Hindu pantheon of gods or god forms all representing one god. I don't know, greatness in sport in this particular analogy. By the way, wouldn't that be a great way to think of it in sports like NFL, NBA? You could have all the positions and the greatest player there represents like the highest human level of accomplishment at that position. But power forward's very different from point guard, and defensive centre is completely different from like pure shooting guard who plays barely any defence. So again, it's not really that interesting. You just go, this person, they're good. So I think it works great for positions because it ensures you celebrate the breadth of the game. You should even have the GOAT kicker and the GOAT coach and the GOAT fucking literally like defensive guard and everything. I always fullback, whatever position you want. So let's get into the esports side and consider that. If we do this in esports, it becomes a way more interesting conversation. If you say, who's the GOAT, and say yes, right, well, it must be Zemu because this thing, well, then you've ended the conversation. You know what, see you. You don't allow a conversation, so I'm not going to have one with you. Bye. Once you've gone, right, dickhead's gone, right, we're all going to have a great convo now, right? Here's what was amazing about what Device did with his fundamentals. Simple, I think the hardest carry ever in an aggressive way. Zemu, amazing player while also sharing with his team and having a really smooth style and not making mistakes, but not always going for the aggressive play. You know what, fuck it, throw Nico in there. The other ones weren't doing it with a rifle. The things he did with a rifle, especially from 2021 onwards, he sort of elevated what rifling even is. And now you have people like Donk on the scene who are absolutely blowing our minds. Isn't that special? And you know what? The GOATs don't stop with that game. You go back to Get Right and Cold Zero at the beginning of the game. Olafmeister is peak. If you want a peak year, someone who can do it all for his team, Olafmeister doing some incredible things that the others aren't doing in their particular eras. That gives him his own interesting conversation, even though, yeah, the longevity's not there. So maybe longevity is what matters to you. Maybe it isn't to me. Who knows? Then you go to games like League of Legends. There's all the positions. So what's beautiful there is sometimes maybe actually support players OP. I think Kerry is one of the reasons they've won every tournament they've ever won. At the same time, having a dominant mid laner, Faker in the first 10 years, is absolutely great. He wouldn't really be the GOAT in the back end of his career. That doesn't mean he isn't the GOAT. But the latter part isn't him as the GOAT, is it? That's not him as the best player or the peak player. Now he's doing clutch plays and playing more of a Magic Johnson thing with his team and guiding them in that sense. Some of the top players, the Shy maybe would have smurfed on everyone in that particular year. You go to jungle, yeah, harder to be the GOAT. But then again, you can define how the whole game's played. You could probably elevate slightly subpar solo lanes and win tournaments. ADC, you might need help to get out of the lane. But people like Deft Name, Uzi, Viper, Ruler. You go down that list, fucking hell, it's like Sesame Street. These are legends. These people, there's time in the game where, in JDG matches, where you could actually be having Faker against Knight, but it's about Ruler, and he's the ADC, so how does that work? Is he not the one carrying the game? Is he not the greatest in that game? Depends what you're asking about, doesn't it? So I actually think these conversations are made way more interesting by doing this, and this isn't some like, let's sit around and huff farts and just talk. If anything, that's just being childish and saying this person has to be for this reason. What we're talking about is expanding our understanding and appreciation for the game and what excellence means in that game, how it manifests in many different multivariate manner, isn't it? So I think one of the things that people have really, really, really missed is you should, at a minimum, allow for a conversation. I actually think, to be intellectually honest, you can never say it has to be this person. You can only say you think it's that person or you think it has to be that person. I always say this. To be intellectually honest, you've got to initially put all of your candidates, and that probably is going to be at a minimum in each sport I've followed, 5 or 6 people. I even think if you don't know in a sport like snooker, you still have to put in Stephen Hendry and Steve Davis, keep going down the line, John Higgins, etc. Because again, it's about what is the GOAT. You can't say it's got Ronnie O'Sullivan because he's so talented and he did the 147s and then the fact you even notice how they speak like that, they don't even one of them self-slow down and think about what they're saying and expand on it and actually go deeper with it and connect it to game concepts or ask philosophical questions like, what is greatness? What does greatest of all time mean? Does it mean your overall career? Does it mean your trophy cabinet? Does it mean the respect of your peers? Does it mean influence on the game? There's many, many, many things it could mean. And until you start going through that conversation, you're not saying anything. Like a little kid going, I think Nintendo's better than PlayStation. He might think he did something there. He might think he cooked or he ate, as the kid says. He did nothing. That was verbal diarrhea. And what did he cook? A fucking instant sausage or something. A fucking Frank, a ballpark Frank. How about put some time into cooking and understand what cooking is? Understand how ingredients work together, what brings out excellence in food and the palate. How about understand what eating is? How to really enjoy food and get it all around the taste buds and key in on a certain aspect and develop your palate. Not just go, burger is most tasty, that is goat. Anyone who says otherwise is a fuckhead. You think I'm just being silly by putting that voice on. That basically is how all their tweets and comments and Reddit comments are read. That's what they're saying. And they're like, I got them all. They don't think what I do. And then let's not even get into the fact that you do get this weird sense that they're not even talking about who was the best in the game. They're sort of talking like that player was their dad. And they're saying, my dad had beat your dad up. And so that somehow reflects positively on them, that they're a genius, that they think Faker's the best because he has the most world titles. So because he has the most world titles, it's like they have the most world titles. Because by saying he did and you saying he's not, you don't get to get credit for him getting the world titles. But they do because they believed it. It's religion again. And by the way, I don't have a problem with religion. I think it's a core function of humans that we can't avoid. And you'll see when someone doesn't have a religion, they will fill something else. Pop singers, sports, politicians, fucking philosophers. They'll put something in that hole. The problem is they won't be aware of it in certain cases. I think religion's better when, you're revering the divine. You're revering the highest forms of expression of consciousness, philosophy, physical endeavor, tactical, strategic play. I think these are amazing. Love, you can even say things like that, right? You know, I'm always rep my set, and the people who've got my back are the following people who support my videos: Matt Pugnatio, Rajcula, Jasun, Jensen Goh, Tosh, Torin, and you know, the all-time ride or die, Jerky's Minion, isn't it? Special thanks to him. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Want to find out who the upcoming interview subjects are? Do you want to take part in one of those long discussions with me where you set the topics? Maybe you want to ask me a question for my video AMA? Well, all of those perks and more are available where? At the Patreon link in the description box below. So put your money where your mouth is and join the Scroominati today. You dig?